I don't really believe in ghosts or anything like that. I never have. I'm the kind of person who needs to see something with my own eyes before I'll accept it. But what happened at that cabin still doesn't sit right with me. It's been a few years, and I still can't explain it. It was my friend Jake's idea. He found this place online, a cabin deep in the woods about 2 hours from where we live. It was supposed to be a birthday weekend for him. Nothing crazy, just 5 of us hanging out, drinking, playing cards, getting away from everything. The listing had good reviews and the price was cheap, so we booked it without thinking twice. We drove up on a Friday afternoon. The road got narrower and narrower the closer we got. Eventually it turned into dirt and we were surrounded by nothing but trees. I remember the air getting colder and the sky looked gray. Even though the forecast said clear, we didn't think much of it. We were just excited to get out of the city. The cabin was old but not falling apart. Wooden porch, big windows, a stone chimney. It actually looked kind of nice from the outside. The owner met us there, an older man maybe in his 60s, gray beard, quiet. He didn't smile much. He gave us the keys and started showing us around the place. That's when he told us the rules. He said it real casual, like it was no big deal. Don't go in the basement, the door is locked anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue. Don't open the back door after midnight, it leads out to the woods, and the latch is broken so it might not close properly. And then he said something that stuck with me. He said, "Don't mention the woman in the photograph hanging in the hallway, just leave it alone." I looked at Jake and he just shrugged. I figured the guy was just old and eccentric. Some people are weird about their properties. After the owner left, we settled in and started having a good time. We unpacked our stuff, claimed our rooms, and got a fire going in the fireplace. The cabin was cozy and we were all in a good mood. We cooked some food, cracked open a few beers, and just talked. It felt like a normal weekend trip with friends. The sun started going down and the woods outside got darker and darker. I remember looking out the window and not being able to see more than a few feet past the porch. The trees just swallowed up all the light. At some point, one of my friends asked about the photograph. I had honestly forgotten about it by then, but he brought it up and we all went to look at it. It was hanging in the hallway like the owner said. A black and white photo of a woman. She looked young, maybe in her 20s, with dark hair and a white dress. She was standing in front of the cabin we were staying in. Same porch, same door, same windows. But something about her eyes felt off. They were almost too dark, like the photographer had captured something she didn't want to be captured. We looked at it for a few seconds and then someone joked about the owner's creepy rules. We laughed it off and went back to the living room. But I kept thinking about that photo, the way the woman was standing, the way she looked directly at the camera, like she knew someone was watching. I pushed it out of my mind and tried to enjoy the night. We played cards and listened to music, and time passed quickly. By midnight, everyone was getting tired, but we were still having fun. Then I heard a knock on the back door. We all froze and looked at each other. I asked if someone was expecting anybody, and nobody said yes. We were in the middle of nowhere, so it didn't make sense for anyone to be out there. We all went quiet. The knocking came again, 3 slow taps. I looked at Jake and he looked at me. Nobody moved. Then one of my friends laughed nervously and said it was probably just a branch or an animal, but we all knew it didn't sound like that. It sounded like knuckles on wood, deliberate and patient. I checked my phone and it was 12:15 a.m. We had just broken the owner's rule about the back door. I told everyone to just ignore it and not open the door. But Jake, being Jake, said it was probably nothing and got up to check. I told him to stop, but he didn't listen. He walked to the back door and looked through the small window. He stood there for a few seconds, and then he turned around with this weird look on his face. He said there was nobody out there, just darkness. I felt a wave of relief, but it didn't last, because as soon as he stepped away from the door, we all heard it. A whisper. It was faint, like someone was standing right on the other side of the door. It said one word that we all heard clearly. It said, "Let me in." We all backed away from the door. My heart was pounding and I could feel cold sweat on my back. Jake locked the door and put a chair in front of it. We tried to laugh it off and convince ourselves it was just our imagination, but none of us could shake the feeling that something was outside watching us. The rest of the night passed slowly. We didn't sleep much, and every creak of the cabin made us jump. Eventually, morning came and we decided to pack up and leave early. We didn't even discuss staying another night. We were all done with that place. As we were loading the car, Jake told me he had gone to the bathroom during the night and passed by the hallway. He said the photograph of the woman was gone. The frame was still on the wall, but the photo itself had been removed. I told him maybe one of us took it down as a joke, but nobody admitted to doing it. Jake got this look on his face, and then he told me something that made my stomach drop. He said when he looked at the frame, the glass was shattered from the inside like someone had pushed the photo out from behind it. I didn't believe him at first. I thought maybe he was messing with me, but he seemed genuinely shaken. We both went back inside to check, and sure enough, the frame was still hanging on the wall, but the photo was gone. There were small shards of glass on the floor beneath it like something had pushed through from the back. I looked around the hallway, but there was no sign of the photograph anywhere. It had just vanished. I felt this cold feeling creep up my spine, and I told Jake we needed to leave right now. We packed the car in record time and got out of there. None of us talked much on the drive back. I think we were all processing what had happened and trying to make sense of it. I tried to come up with logical explanations. Maybe someone broke in during the night and took the photo. Maybe the owner had a secret way inside and was messing with us. Maybe we were all just tired and our imaginations ran wild, but none of those explanations felt right. A few weeks later, I looked up the cabin online. I found the original listing and started reading the reviews. Most of them were positive, but there was one that caught my attention. It was from a few years ago, and it said something that made my blood run cold. The person wrote that they had a strange experience at the cabin and that they kept seeing a woman in a white dress standing at the edge of the woods at night. They said she never came closer, but she just stood there watching the house. They also mentioned the owner's weird rules and said they wished they had taken them more seriously. I tried to find more information about the property, but there wasn't much out there. The cabin has changed ownership a few times, and there were no records of anything unusual happening there. But I know what I heard that night. I know the knocking was real, and I know that whisper wasn't in my head. I still think about that photograph sometimes. The way the woman looked at the camera like she was trying to tell us something. Or maybe she was trying to warn us. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but I do know that I will never stay in a cabin in the woods again. Not ever. My story is short, but pretty disturbing. All of this happened when I was around 9 years old. I was at my childhood best friend's house for a sleepover. We had done this so many times before that it felt completely routine. Her house was always warm and welcoming. Her mom would make us dinner and we'd stay up way too late watching movies and laughing. That night we had pasta. I remember specifically that my friend was allergic to butter, so she ate hers plain. Her mom always made me wash my hands after eating anything with butter, because even a tiny amount could make my friend sick. It was just one of those little rules you don't think twice about. I washed my hands like I always did and didn't give it another thought. We played games, talked about school, and eventually crawled into her twin-sized bed. It was a small room with posters on the walls and a window that faced the backyard. The kind of room that felt safe and cozy. I fell asleep without any trouble. I was a kid, and kids sleep hard. But something woke me up in the middle of the night. I don't know what it was. No noise, no dream, just a sudden jolt into consciousness. I lay there for a second, trying to figure out why I was awake. And that's when I noticed the hallway light was on. A sliver of yellow light was cutting through the crack in the bedroom door. I thought it was strange because everyone should have been asleep by then. My curiosity got the best of me. I carefully got out of bed and crept toward the door. I peered through the crack into the hallway and saw nothing. The light was on, but there was nobody there. Just the empty hallway with the bathroom door closed and the stairs at the end. I figured someone must have forgotten to turn it off, so I reached my hand out and flipped the switch. The hallway went dark and I went back to bed. I lay there for about 10 minutes trying to fall asleep again. The house was dead quiet. No creaks, no wind, just silence. And then I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, not like someone walking normally, more like someone taking their time, dragging their feet just a little. I froze in bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure anyone could hear it. The hallway light clicked back on, and I saw a figure standing in the crack of the doorway. The door slowly creaked open, and I saw my friend's mom standing there. At first I thought she was just checking on us like parents sometimes do. But something was very wrong. She wasn't standing normally. She was tilted slightly to one side, and her head was turned at an odd angle, like a dog trying to understand a sound it couldn't quite place. I kept my eyes almost closed, just barely cracked open so I could see, but she wouldn't know I was awake. I was terrified. I didn't know why, but every instinct in my body was screaming at me to stay still and stay quiet. Then my friend suddenly sat up in bed. She didn't rub her eyes or stretch like she'd just woken up. She just rose up like she had been waiting for this moment. She ran to her mom standing at the door and started crying. Not normal crying either. loud hysterical sobbing like something had terrified her. Her mom didn't comfort her. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just stood there with that same strange tilted head. My friend pointed in my direction and began crying even louder. Then her mother finally spoke. Her voice was low and strange, not her normal warm voice at all. It sounded almost like two people were speaking at the same time. She asked, "Did she touch Butter Honey?" I was so confused I couldn't understand why her mother would ask such a dumb question when she had watched me wash my hands earlier. I had been so careful. I always was. And then my friend spoke directly to me. She said, "I know you're awake." And I refused to open my eyes or show that I was awake. I just lay there frozen, pretending to be asleep. They eventually left the room, but before my friend's mother left with her, she turned back toward me and said in the creepiest voice I've ever heard, almost demonic, "I'll be back soon. You better be asleep." I was on the verge of tears. My heart was pounding and I could barely breathe. They closed the door and shut off the hallway light, plunging the room into darkness. A few minutes passed and then I heard knocking on the walls. It wasn't coming from the door or the window. It was inside the walls, tapping slowly and rhythmically like someone was playing with me. I covered myself in blankets for comfort. I buried my head under the pillow and squeezed my eyes shut. Somehow I managed to fall asleep despite being terrified out of my mind. When I woke up the next morning, my friend was sleeping peacefully next to me as if nothing had occurred that night. I woke her up and asked her what her problem was last night and why she was crying. She looked at me completely dumbfounded. She had no idea what I was talking about. I asked her if she remembered getting up in the middle of the night and pointing at me. She just stared at me blankly and said she slept through the whole night. When her mom came in to make breakfast, I watched her closely. She was acting completely normal, cheerful and warm like she always was, not the cold, confused figure I had seen in the doorway. I asked her mom if she had come to check on us during the night and she said no. She said she slept through the whole night too. Both of them had no recollection of what happened, and I knew for a fact that what happened was real. This wasn't a nightmare. This was something entirely different. I never slept over again after that. I couldn't. Every time my friend asked me to stay, I made up an excuse. I told my parents I didn't like her house anymore, but I never explained why. Years passed and I mostly pushed the memory aside. It was too confusing and too terrifying to think about. But then I heard something that brought it all back. Apparently a woman who looked identical to my friend's mom had died in that house from a house fire years before they moved in. The house had been rebuilt, but something must have stayed behind. I still don't know what I saw that night. I don't know if it was a ghost or some kind of entity that mimicked my friend's mother. I don't know why my friend pointed at me or why she said, "I know you're awake," when she was supposedly asleep the whole time. And I definitely don't know what that thing meant when it said, "I'll be back soon." I'm 18 now, and I still think about that night. I still wonder if that thing is still in that house, waiting for someone else to wake up in the middle of the night. I never went back, and I never will. Some doors are better left closed forever. My name is Liam, and I live in a small town in Ireland. This is a story from when I was 12 years old. Back then, my closest friends were Mark, Nova, and Chris. We were pretty much inseparable. We went to the same school, played on the same teams, and spent almost every afternoon together. One Thursday after school, we were hanging out at the local park, just messing around on the swings and kicking a ball. Mark asked if any of us had plans for the weekend. None of us really did. So we agreed to meet up at school the next day with ideas, and we would pick the best one. Friday came and we all had our suggestions. Most of them were pretty similar. Going to the mall, hanging out at the arcade, grabbing food, nothing special. But then I suggested something different. I said we should have a sleepover. None of us had ever done one together, and it felt like the perfect way to spend the weekend. After a long discussion, we all agreed to have it at Mark's house. He had a huge garden with an old oak tree in the back. We decided we would build a tent out there and camp out for the night. It sounded like an adventure, and we were all excited. We all gathered at Mark's house on Saturday, but Nova didn't show up. We called his house and his mom picked up. She said he had come down with a fever and couldn't make it. We were disappointed, but we understood. We carried on with our plans, and Mark's parents were incredibly welcoming. They brought us snacks and drinks and helped us set up the tent. His dad even showed us how to tie the ropes properly so the tent wouldn't collapse. We spent the whole day running around the garden, playing games and just being kids. The evening went by fast, and before we knew it, the sun was going down. We grabbed our sleeping bags and climbed into the tent with comics, snacks, drinks, and a handheld video game console Mark had brought. It was the perfect setup. The tent was big enough for all three of us, and the garden was completely dark except for the light coming from the house. We stayed up late playing games and telling dumb jokes, the kind of stuff 12-year-old boys do when they're having the time of their lives. We played until around 1:50 a.m. and slowly everyone started getting tired. One by one, we started drifting off. Mark was the first to fall asleep, then Chris. I was about to fall asleep too when I heard something that made my eyes snap open. It was soft at first, footsteps, slow and deliberate. I thought maybe it was Mark's dad checking on us, but the footsteps didn't sound like they were coming from the house. They were coming from the garden, right outside the tent. I sat up and listened. My heart was starting to beat faster. I woke Chris and Mark up by shaking them gently, and they both stirred. I whispered for them to be quiet, and they heard it too. Through the fabric of the tent, we could see a shadow, a figure standing just outside. It was tall and still, not moving, just standing there watching. I felt cold fear creep down my spine. Mark grabbed my arm, and Chris was frozen. None of us knew what to do. Then we heard a voice. It was familiar. It was Nova's voice. He said, "Hey, open up friends, I'm Nova." But something was wrong. His voice was exactly the same, but there was something hollow about it, like it wasn't really coming from a person. He repeated himself, "Open up, I'm really Nova," over and over again. The voice kept repeating his name. "I'm Nova, I'm really Nova," over and over like a broken record. It didn't sound like he was trying to convince us. It sounded like he was trying to convince himself. I looked at Mark and Chris, and we were all thinking the same thing. Nova was supposed to be at home sick. His mom said he had a fever. She would never drop him off at this time of night. And why was he standing outside in the dark, repeating his name like that? Something was very, very wrong. My instincts kicked in, and I grabbed the steel water bottle next to me. I didn't think. I just threw it at the shadow. I heard it hit something solid, and then everything changed. The figure went silent for a second, and then it started slamming against the tent, hard. The whole structure shook, and we all screamed. Mark was crying. Chris was frozen. I was shouting for help as loud as I could. The tent was collapsing around us, and that thing was still outside, slamming and slamming like it was trying to tear through. Mark's parents came running out of the house. I could see the lights turn on and hear his dad shouting. The second they got close, the shadow disappeared, just vanished into the dark garden like it was never there. His mom opened the tent and found us all huddled together, crying and shaking. We were just 12-year-old kids. We couldn't explain what we had seen. We told them everything. The footsteps, the voice, the slamming. They dialed Nova's mom immediately, but she didn't answer. They tried again and again, but nothing. They calmed us down and told us we were safe. We slept inside the house that night. None of us wanted to go back near that tent. In the morning around 10 a.m., Nova's mom finally called back. She said Nova was home and had been there all night. His fever had gone down and he was resting. I asked Mark's mom to confirm that Nova was really okay, and she said yes, he was fine. So if Nova was home in bed, then who the hell was outside our tent? Mark's parents filed a report with the police, and they said they would look into it, but nothing ever came of it. I'm 25 now, and I still think about that night sometimes. I still hear that voice in my head repeating his name. I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't thrown that water bottle. Would the slamming have stopped? Would it have gotten inside? Who or what was standing in that garden pretending to be my friend? I don't have answers, and I probably never will. But I've never had a sleepover in a tent since then, and I don't think I ever will.